and today we have an almost 100% spontaneous live stream, but we don't have it with the spontaneous, without spontaneous quality. We know the quality of the person we have on today, and today we have on with us Martin Barnes. Martin Barnes is one of my great LinkedIn connections, and I will let him explain who he is and what he does. Martin, tell the people who you are.
Hey, Jumo, it's fantastic to be here. I am the Crocodile Wrestler.
let that marinate for a second for everyone who wants to know why.
And that's what it feels like being the father of 3.5-year-old twin girls.
For real?
So, yeah. So from the moment they wake up in the morning, they come running into our room, jump on the bed, daddy, 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 till one of them is still drifting off to sleep right now here in the UK. It's just gone 8:30, and it's just crocodile wrestling all day. And when I'm not wrestling crocodiles, I'm a pitch coach, and I help you find the story that's going to catch the attention of your audience.
Oh, that's great. Wait, let's rewind. Let's go back to the twin girls. I got 2 girls myself.
Okay.
Right. We have caimans in Trinidad and Tobago. We don't necessarily have crocodiles. So I've never wrestled a crocodile, but I can only imagine what it feels like. And if you are saying that, then I probably would want to agree with you that it's probably like that. Yeah. And you how old are they? They're 9 and 7 right now. Mm-hmm. All right, so they're bigger crocodiles than you have, but they're really great. They're really awesome.
I love every single moment, and it's a challenge. Everybody who's a parent knows that, but it's a beautiful challenge. And I remember trying to get them dressed, and one was climbing on my back, and the other was climbing across my front, and I'm trying to get them into clothes, and she wants to wear what she's got, she wants to wear what's in the laundry, and it's just like a constant negotiation. And they pitched me into a corner in about 30 seconds, and so they finally got dressed, and then they ran out the room, down the stairs to breakfast, and I just sat on the bed and just went, Jesus, it's like wrestling crocodiles. And it just became, I was like, okay, that could be. And I just read a report from the the Business Harvard Review, or Harvard Business Review, and it was like, you need to have a pitch for your pitch. And that had been floating around in my head because I'd just done some studies. I did like a postgraduate in education, and I focused it on pitching. Mm-hmm. And so with that insight and that experience, I put the two together, and I was like, this is now how I'm going to introduce myself, because I want to make sure I have your attention before I tell you what I really do. And Crocodile Wrestler gets so much attention.
Do some people get disappointed when they realize crocodiles is metaphorical?
There was one guy, we had like a half an hour conversation, and we were talking about me doing an event for his university. And he said, I kept saying to him, you got any more questions? He's like, had a few more questions about living in China that I had done and stuff. And then we just about finished. He goes, one more question. So how do you actually wrestle crocodiles? And I was like, I had to then let him go. And I said, I don't actually wrestle crocodiles. He's like, what? I thought you wrestled crocodiles. I said, yeah, no, they're my twin daughters. And then he went, oh, and it kind of all fell into place. So the really nice thing is that you have so many layers and timings to reveal what it's actually all about. And it catches people's attention, and they lean in and they say, tell me what that means. I'm curious. And so my pitch is now actually a conversation. And so I'm not telling you too much of who I am or what I do. I'm not selling you too fast, but we're building rapport. And it's probably the best thing I've done recently, especially on social media, because every time somebody DMs me, there's a reference to crocodiles somewhere. And so it means that they've read it and they've seen it and they're thinking about it and they've made that connection with me. And so I try and encourage other people to come up with their version of Crocodile Wrestler. And it's not a case of trying to replicate how I did it, but it's just basically, how do you pitch to catch somebody's attention?
So let me get this right. So if you were to explain to someone how to catch someone's attention, you tell them come up with their own version of Crocodile Wrestler. So is it that if you were to train someone, like a part of your, like one of your training decks, one of these slides would be like an exercise, or come up with your own Crocodile Wrestler version. Is that what might happen?
Yeah. So I actually do a webinar. I did a webinar. It's called How to Pitch Like a Crocodile Wrestler. And we had 5 people come to the webinar, and we worked on their version of Crocodile Wrestler. So somebody walked away saying, I help kids be Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
You're interested, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm leaning in. I'm leaning in.
Yeah. And then somebody else's pitch was, what's your favorite cookie? What's your favorite cookie? What cookie you can't stop eating?
Right.
And then
right.
somebody else's pitch was, I'm the Post-it note artist.
Oh, that's cool. I could see that. It makes me want to ask questions. Do you make collages out of Post-it notes, or do you stick Post-it notes and draw on them? What do you do? Makes me ask questions.
Yeah. And the whole point of, and then the other person was, so when they are, so the core thing is like, what do you do? And one person sort of said, we haven't quite figured his out yet, but he was basically like, I have a window box garden, so I grow tomatoes. And it's not quite as well developed, but it's a way of introducing himself where he's not necessarily going to talk about what he does until he's got your attention. And nobody's expecting you to talk about tomatoes when they ask you what you do, unless you're a tomato grower, a farmer, which he isn't.
Yeah.
And then
go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the last person, when they ask him what he does, is he flips it around and he says, well, why don't I ask you a question? Imagine if you went into your kitchen and you had to navigate your kitchen with you couldn't see, or there was no dials on your coffee maker, or on your oven. There was no 1, 2, 3 grill, bake, oven, fan. So again, he's working on his, but he's in the sort of visually impaired industry.
Right.
So he's trying to figure out how to flip it so it becomes like an attention-grabbing conversation starter.
Right. It feels like almost like when you it feels like Subversion, and Subversion always catches someone's attention.
There you go. Yeah.
So they have one expectation and then something else happens, and they're like, what is this? And they really want to find out more. Okay, that's great. That's wonderful. I'm thinking what would mine be? Because I haven't done that yet. What would mine be? I don't know. Do you ask questions to figure that out, or how does it work?
Yeah. Well, I have a process that I take people through, and first of all, it's kind of explaining. It's like, it's not about just jamming 2 things together, which is a more complex way of explaining what you do, and it's not about replicating the way that I do it. So it's not about, I need to find a sort of animal that I can relate to. It's not about that. It's about saying, when somebody, like you said, subversion of expectations, you nailed it perfectly. You get it. When somebody's asking you, what do you do? They're expecting you to say, I'm an accountant, or I'm a designer, or I'm a photographer. And it's kind of coming in as a very sort of literal description. Or if you look in LinkedIn, it's a lot of people saying, I help so-and-so do so-and-so to achieve so-and-so. And there is so much of it that it doesn't actually really, well, I don't know. I'm not going to give you my brain energy to try and figure that out. Whereas if you sort of go, I'm a crocodile wrestler, they're like, what? And then they're tuned in from wherever they were mentally before, they're now with you, and they're like, okay, tell me what that means. And then it's a bit like opening the curtain.
Right.
Crocodile Wrestler is the curtain. As you say it, you open the curtain, and what's behind the curtain is what I really do.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I think well, I always like to talk about how we met when people come on to the live stream with me. And I've
Yeah.
been trying to figure out the exact way. Normally, I just go check in the DMs and see what happens, especially with people who I meet on LinkedIn. But I know you are also not just let me just read it out. I mean, I might as well read it. You are also unlock your creativity with sketching. Tell me what that's about.
So I love sketching, and I particularly love sketching on an iPad. And I love sketching because it's not drawing. And when I was a kid, I really, really wanted to be able to draw. Like, my grandfather was an artist, my mother was an art teacher. I had 2 friends growing up who were just insanely good at drawing, and I really wanted to have that skill, but I just didn't. And I would practice and practice, and I'd look at my friends. One of them is now like head of animation on Hollywood movies like Paddington Bear,
cool.
Harry Potter, The Golden Compass. So this guy's been able to draw like amazing. And so he was my best friend at school. And so I'm watching him and I'm like, you know how you're just a bit envious of your friends, or you compare yourselves to them. And then another friend, he sells paintings of birds for like, I don't know, £20,000. And he was painting bird pictures when he was 11 that were going on postcards that were being sold all over the world and stuff. And if I'd compared myself to those two, I would have given up visualizing. But in my mind, I suddenly realized that actually they can draw, I can sketch. And a sketch is measured on communication. So whenever I speak to somebody, I try to show a sketch, because that's going to reduce the amount of words I have to say and the amount of effort that you're going to use to understand. And you're going to look at the sketch and go, great. And then we're just going to move forward quicker. So I really believe that sketching is not drawing. Sketching can become drawing, but everybody can sketch. And we used to do it at school, and we were just talking about our kids and pens and paper. Kids don't have the inhibitions. They just go crazy.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point in life, you start measuring yourself. And my story of my measuring myself to my 2 friends almost put me off, because I didn't, you know, it could have been like, well, I can't do it, so I'm going to give up. And then I sort of said, well, actually, sketching is so beautiful that it's so useful that I can't give up. I have to keep pushing. And then I found myself thinking that actually, no, it's not about how good I am at drawing. It's about how good I am at communication. And if a sketch do that, then we win.
I love that. I think let me try and quote you now, because I love to quote people when they say cool things. So you said a sketch is measured by its communication. Yes?
Yeah.
Is that something that you came up with?
I don't know. You could Google it, and probably 100 people have said it. It was a moment where I decided that when I was going to talk to people about sketching, and I wanted to talk about the people who say, I can't draw. I'm like, perfect. I don't want you to draw. I want you to sketch. And then I was like, okay, well, how do I move that logic train forward another step? And it's like, okay, so drawing is always rated on how good it is. And you've always got Picasso, Michelangelo, you've got a million people we've never heard of. So there's always somebody better than you. So great, okay, that's how drawing's measured. But in the mindset, if I can sketch, if somebody has understood me faster, then the sketch is successful, and then it's a win. So even if it's like a piece of paper with a stick figure and an arrow pointing to a box, and you say that box represents the internet, here's my stick figure user, and his pain is buying fresh vegetables. You've sketched out a problem, and I'm not verbally explaining that. It goes into your ears, into your brain, and I don't know what you're seeing. So I'm limiting the risk of miscommunication.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I hadn't thought about it like that. So you're saying anyone who wants to be able to deliver an idea or communicate something clearer can use that tool, an effective tool, which is sketching, to deliver that idea to someone. So it's almost like you start using the whole analogy of a picture, or a picture speaks 1,000 words type of thing, by just employing that particular technique in communicating? And this is specifically for pitches, or this is for any type of communication?
For anything. So, for example, I would go when I used to live in China, and so I was in Beijing, and I was working for Volkswagen, and as a consultant or as a free agency, and they would phone me up on the morning and say, "Hey, Martin, we have a project that needs to get finished by the end of the week. Can you do it?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I'd go over to them. Within 2 hours of a phone call, we'd be having a meeting, and the guy's debriefing me, and I've got my iPad, and as they're just debriefing me, I'm making notes on my iPad, and it's a mixture of, imagine it's like a whiteboard but in your hand, obviously, and there's a mixture of icons and arrows and words, and then the guy's looking over and he's like, "You're writing down what I'm saying, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it gave him so much trust in that moment that his ideas were starting to be visualized, and the train to his solution had started. And so it's not just about pitches, it's about anything in communication. So essentially, I say this to people, I'm like, if you can be the person that in a meeting jumps up and starts whiteboarding the meeting as people are bouncing ideas around, and you're there capturing the words, the images, the ideas, and people can see you turning the intangible into tangible, they will love you, because you are making this meeting valuable instead of it being a waste of time. Because most people just sit there talking, talk. Everyone keeps their own private notes, and then what happens next? There's a massive, well, I thought you said this, and I thought you said that. Whereas if you can sort of like centralize the communication, everyone can see their ideas on the board, everyone's words have been absorbed and documented. They walk out going, "That was a fantastic meeting, and Jane, she managed to do that for us," because she had the confidence to get up on the whiteboard and just start writing and sketching what she was hearing. So I use them in my presentations and pitches, but I'm also like, every single professional, if I call it the sketching professional, if you can add sketching to your professional skill set, you are visualizing stuff, you're reducing the time to communicate, and you're creating shared ownership of ideas. People love that, and that's what we do.
That's fantastic. This is opening up a whole new thing for me, because here I am thinking that, not, you were saying sketching, but here I am thinking you were saying drawing, and you're clearly not. So I probably would have gone away at some other time saying, "Yeah, Martin Barnes, he draws and stuff," but that's not true. You're sketching to communicate, so the sketch has a purpose. So is a lot of your content, and I know what it is, but is a lot of your content on LinkedIn communicated via sketching?
I'm finding my feet on LinkedIn right now. It's the only platform I use, and I'm trying to figure out my flow, my audience, my content. And so I've been a bit choppy, and I did a lot of text posting. I started doing sketching. I've started doing videos, and I haven't got like a consistent regular flow, but I want it to be sketches. And what I was doing was, and also one thing I just want to say on your last point is, I have removed the word drawing from my vocabulary.
Right.
Never call it drawing. And if I accidentally call it drawing, I stop myself and correct myself. I'm like, this is sketching. Because always, when I say to people, sketching is not drawing, I never want to confuse them by saying it's actually drawing. So I just wanted to get that in, because I think that's a really important mindset. Like putting in the stake in the ground of your mindset is like, this is sketching. But what I do on LinkedIn is, and I haven't done it for a long time, is when you go on engage on people's posts, and people write comments which are essentially affirmations of the main post, or their kind of reinterpretations or their echoes of the post. Some of them are super great, some of them are a little bit whatever. I try to sketch the answer, because you can upload photos into the comments.
Right.
I will read someone's post and I'm like, that's so good, and I'll just sketch it and say, hey, that was fantastic, you made me do this, and then I'll upload the sketch. And so that's how I got onto Ash's podcast, Ash's live last week, because he
Oh,
posted,
okay.
because he's a machine. He's posting all the time, really great stuff. And so instead of just going, hey, that was great, or I think the same thing, which is fine, I'm not criticizing that, but I wanted to do something a bit different. So I sketched it and I said, hey, this is what you just talked about. And it really stuck in his mind. And so that's how I'm using it in LinkedIn, is as a way to make bridges with people and say, I've just visualized your thinking. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about sketching is communication.
Okay. All right. So my gears are turning so fast in so many different directions now, trying to triangulate the expression of what you're saying. And the reason for that is because you're saying it to me and in real time. I'm trying to track down how your content is something that happens to me when I hear people talk about what they do and I haven't really figured it out yet. It's like it's trying to triangulate what your content should be like, because that's what I do. I'm just trying to triangulate it. So you're saying so the fact that you said that you are trying to going along the process of trying to figure out what the content focus is that correct? Almost like what the well, you know what the message is, but you're trying to figure out the forms. Is that, can I say that?
I know what I do.
Yes.
And now I'm trying to figure out how to broadcast that on a massive platform.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out my audience, and I'm trying to figure out how to understand them.
Right. Right.
I'm too much of a teacher.
Right. Right.
How you do it. This is how you do it. This is how you do it. And it's a bit like, I don't want to be told how to do it all the time. And so I'm really battling with myself. And that's why I love watching what you're doing, and why we haven't told anyone how we put this live together, have we? Do you want to tell people?
No, what happened, it was spontaneous, but today what happened is that I did not plan to do a live today because I was busy. I had to go I had a meeting and I had to go do stuff and things with the family. But when I came back, I was like, hey, I have half hour. And I just put it out on LinkedIn and said, I have half hour. And if anybody wants to come on, just DM me. And then it was like 20 minutes to showtime, and your DM popped in. I was like, oh, it's Martin. And we had already had a meeting set for next week. We had like a meeting booked for us to talk. So I was like, oh great, Martin. I know Martin. Let's do it. And so you had me rushing in and out trying to get everything ready, even though it was my idea.
Yeah.
And here we are talking about it.
Yeah. Which is, I was just, the kids have just gone to bed. I'm tired. I'm just looking through my LinkedIn, and then I saw your post and I was like, why not? Why don't we just accelerate why don't we have our private phone call live and just, we would probably talk about these things. The thing is, I want to learn more about you, because I don't want to just be me talking.
Yeah, shoot. You go ahead. You ask me a question. That would be cool for a change. Oh, by the way, before we do that, I actually hold on. Is the light too much? Let me see. Okay, so we actually draw sometimes, not sketch, unfortunately.
Oh wow!
So we have my kids and I. We do our drawing. So they draw their stuff.
Oh, wonderful! I love it.
What was that? They love to draw. And back in the day, sorry, I'm really offending your sensibilities right now using the word drawing.
No. I love drawing. I respect drawing. I just don't do it, and I don't teach people how to draw.
Right. Oh, look at this. But the funny thing is that back in the day, I was heavily into drawing a whole lot. This is what I used to do back in the day. Like this.
Oh wow.
A camera.
Yeah. Okay, nice. Yeah.
That was me at 18 or something like that.
Okay.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, really long time ago. Go ahead. So ask me a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you were talking about how we got connected, and then I guess it was the sketch. I remember that now. But then I came onto one of your lives, and you were talking about photography, and
right.
You had two friends on. I think you'd photographed their wedding, and
yeah.
The hummingbird story. There was with the
Right.
hummingbird.
Right. So let me explain. Okay, before I do that, let me just recognize some of the people on LinkedIn. Hi,
Yeah.
Shri. Shri is just saying hello.
Hello.
Janelle Cindy is on. Um, what she said? Money grows on trees when you pitch like a crocodile wrestler. And Jamal always coming in with the hot comments, making it. He's saying we're making it happen here
Excellent.
on the live. And I have a couple. Now there's one guy who is on my Facebook. His name is Akko. I only figured out I went to school with the guy, but his let me show you. So this is his name on Facebook. His name is Sugar Shack on Facebook. So I just want to acknowledge you, Akko. I finally figured out what Sugar Shack is. So and my wife is texting me, "Hi, Brands." Okay, go ahead. So the question was.
So we had a little exchange in LinkedIn comments, and they get buried so fast sometimes, which is a bit of a shame. And then I tuned into I think I just kept seeing you in my feed, commenting on other people, posting content. And then I saw you go live. I was like, hey, I'm just going to tune in. And you were talking about the wedding photography. And I was just super interested because you were sort of revealing parts of your career and professionalism that I had no idea about. So I mean, tell me what you do.
All right, so let me explain. Okay, so I started photography in 2006, shot my first wedding in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
The business I started was a wedding photography business, went full-time in 2008. And in the first years of Relate Studios as the company I run now, we shot, our main business was wedding photography and wedding video to some degree. And we've been to at least 10 Caribbean countries, to Africa, to the UK, to all over the US shooting weddings and events. And I know, weddings have tapered off and we've given rise to a different type of company because my business partner, he actually is into marketing. He teaches marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So the company was destined to become some sort of marketing company. And we had branded the company a strategic marketing communications company beforehand. And we kind of just never pressed in on it. So right now we actually, let me reveal this, we're actually in the middle of a massive internal recalibration exercise.
Mm-hmm.
That's taking weeks and weeks. And after that, some of the content that I post on LinkedIn will kind of change. Mm-hmm. Not drastically, but I'll kind of wean some things off and I'll focus on other things. So in terms of the photography, my first business was being a photographer. Yeah. And there's so much things I could teach about that, but there's so much I don't want to say about it because what you put out there is what people are going to expect you to do. Yeah. And I learned that lesson a long time ago. And so I can't talk about some things because then people, one of my friends, one of my neighbors, he messaged me yesterday and asked, hey, do you have a photo printer? I want to print some photos. And I was like, no, I don't have a photo printer. So yeah, that's what happens. People tend to think of you of one way until you tell them how to think of you. So I would literally have to be like, no, I'm not this. I am now this. Yeah. And we've encountered that same problem with one of my friends who does the same guy who was on the live stream. That guy, mm-hmm. In the beginning when I was doing my websites, he would help me with it, and now he never built websites, but now it's even worse. And I told him, I know you don't do that anymore. I don't know why we keep on asking you to do these things. This is you don't even do that anymore because he's a software. He manages a team of software engineers. I say, I know you don't build websites. So, so that's what has happened. So yeah, so that's my deal. There's a lot of details. I could talk about this for hours, but that's just the overview of my kind of media career.
But you've always been, you were showing your sketchbook then, you've always been creative and creating and using different mediums?
Yeah. Well, to be quite honest, I thought that I would be a graphic designer.
Uh-huh.
and I kind of was for a while. But when I went to do graphic design, when I went to study it, I didn't get in. I was 17, and I literally have a bag full of portfolio things from when I was 17, and the teacher just said, the people who were interviewing me said, "No, you're not ready to do this graphic design," and basically they told me that I couldn't get in.
Huh?
And I went back home very disappointed. And my mother told me, "Well, if you can't do that, go do something else." And I said, "All right, cool." And I went back, and what they had open was the printing technician course.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "All right, I'll sign up for that." And I signed up for printing technician, and I got through on a technicality because technically you're supposed to have done physics or chemistry to be in printing at that time. And the only science I had was human and social biology. But I still got in, and yeah, it was fantastic. It was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, going to that course, and it taught me so much. So I am actually trained in print. I've operated printing offset presses, Heidelbergs, those big presses that take up 2 rooms type of things. I was a lithographer in the first part of my career, would process cameras and stuff like that, and film and dark rooms and orthochromatic and the red light. You know, in the movie you see red lights. And people like with a little tray developing film. That was me for a while, you know? So cool stuff.
I mean, I totally hear you. Like, there is so much, because I trained in graphic design. I worked in graphic design in London for 4 years. I then went to China to teach graphic design on a 2-year contract, and that became 16 years.
Wow.
But I talk about it. And I don't talk about my branding projects or my advertising projects, because I don't want people to come and ask me to give them a branding proposal, because I'm like, I sketch and I do pitching and training. Like, I don't want to do those. I love branding, but I like it when other people do it. I love graphic design, and I love being able to like open some software and create whatever I want quickly. And slide design in presentations is graphic design.
Yes.
Very simple. But it's not what I want to do, because it's not what gives me joy. It's not how I can really help people transform. And there are a lot of graphic designers out there. So it just ends up being a race to the bottom, because clients start saying, well, he can do it cheaper and she can do it cheaper. And you're kind of like, well, they're not me. Do you want to work with me? Well, they're very good, but they're them. So, you know, I don't do it because of those reasons.
Yeah. That is a general complaint in the graphic design fraternity, that it is a race to the bottom with clients. And I think graphic design generally has been ravaged over the years because it's become a commodity. And people don't... You see, the conversation with graphic design has to change in order for it to be valuable again. It has to be about the relationship, and more about the relationship and less about the product. And so people have to get wise about how they present themselves and don't fight in that race to the bottom. So, because I have my friends, they complain all the time, and they're quite talented, but the client, they can't charge what they want for the work that they do, because there's some... And, you know, I mean, and it's understandable that some whippersnapper would come and be very, very good and do their stuff. But, you know, it's always a race to the bottom with that. It's a very, very difficult field to be in. And I don't know if anybody who's listening to me can relate. If you can relate to that, just put a comment referencing the graphic design struggles, and I'll put it up. I'll reference it when we talk. Yeah.
I mean, it's also become... graphic designers now need to have more... It's more about strategy and business, because if you like with a platform like Canva, it's like the actual end visual is not the problem anymore.
Yes.
But how does that visual connect to your audience, relate to your business goals, drive growth? So I did a logo design for somebody 2019, and she asked me to work on the project. I gave her a proposal. She looked at the proposal number, was like, my Jesus, and my God, that's big. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, why is it so expensive? And I'm like, because we're good. And it's not actually about designing the logo. It's about understanding your needs and your customers and your values, and then taking you through a process where your business is getting visualized by this image. And it's not just like, do you like this image? When you look at the image, you see all of your decisions in there, and you're not making those decisions. I'm guiding you through that process. And at the end of the day, she didn't complain about the price. She just said yes. And then at the end, she's like, wow, this is $1 billion logo. And she was so invested in the result. And we didn't have any U-turns. We didn't have any nightmares. It just ran really smoothly. But the 70% of the project was strategy.
Yes.
Once you've got that sorted out, then the design is easy, because you know what you have to do. You're just kind of, and then I found that I actually didn't create the logo. I was the creative director. I found a designer that I trusted, and I said, I want you to do what you do. You're never going to meet the client. You're only going to talk to me. And it worked out super well. But those projects are so few and far between that I only do them when people come to me and say, I want you to do this. I don't shop around, because, as we said, it's like a race to the bottom. So
yeah. I agree with that. I agree with the whole, and you know, even that has become a thing now where everybody is like, oh, well, I'm a branding strategist, and that has become a thing now. So there has to be something new, and even that is becoming a bit of a race to the bottom. Not quite yet all over the world, but in some places in the metropolitan areas, you would find that no one wants to be a designer anymore. Everyone wants to be a branding strategist or something of that sort. And people aren't. Not many people are good at it. They just have a title, you know. So so it's a rough thing. So go ahead.
I was going to say, so where tell me what it is. Are you able to talk about what's the new transition, your new focus? Because you've got the useful content creation show. Like where is it from wedding photography back in 2006, 2008 to now? Where are you going?
All right, so here's what I think is going to happen, and I'm saying think because that's my way of putting an asterisk on everything I'm going to say now. So we are going to focus on content creation, that's for sure. Our focus is going to be strongly on video. So the things that you're seeing from me on LinkedIn are going to get amplified. So let me explain my LinkedIn process so you can better understand where I'm coming from. So I'm not going to explain how I ended up on LinkedIn, but let's just suffice to say that I didn't plan to be on LinkedIn, but I just ended up there. And it was some external forces that made me come on. Anyhow, once I got there, I was like, hey, cool, this is not too bad. And then I said, well, I did exactly what you were doing. That's why it's so intriguing to me to hear you say that out loud, because I probably would not have admitted that last year in December when I started, that I was trying to figure it out. I came in and acted like I knew what I was doing, but I didn't.
Same. And we started at the same time. Our power. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, go ahead. Your comments are fine in between.
I decided to focus on LinkedIn in January this year. I thought I could come on and I was like, I can make presentations for CEOs. I can make presentations for the, CEO of Cartier when he goes back and talks about China. I can do all this stuff. So LinkedIn should be easy, right? Oh my God. I feel like I got a bull in a china shop. It's like,
yeah,
hear you.
Yeah, the feeling and so I am with you on that. I came in and I was like, what is this? And I said, well, okay, and I hate to say it, but people always kind of say this, but I just said, well, let me just be myself and just say some things that I know about. And that's what I did. I started to talk about things that I know about. If you go look at my very first video that I posted on LinkedIn, it actually was me on scouting a location for a shoot. And I was on location, and I was saying, this is how you scout a location, which is something that we did all the time for photography. And that was actually a literal photography job that we had. And then from then on, I just kind of started to put out my thoughts and different things. And I figured it out. I didn't start to teach useful things about content creation until January, February, March, April, maybe April. But it seems like I've been doing it all the time. But that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
I literally had branding is my sword, design is my shield, marketing is my armor, and something else is my steed or something. I had something like that written up.
Big.
And I had that, and that made no sense. It sounded nice, but it didn't make any sense. And a couple people were like, "Yeah, you do a lot of stuff." And I was like, "Oh, it is true. It seems like I do a lot of stuff, but I really don't."
Yeah.
And so now we're in the process of defining what that thing is and really cutting it down. And I'm in the process of massive chops, like cutting things.
Yeah.
So on our new website, and I'm gonna reveal some of it on our new website, we are not gonna first say what we do. We're gonna first say what we don't do. And that is how, when people come to the services page, it's gonna say, and should I say this ahead of time? Well, I'm going to assume that not many people are going to watch this live stream. It's going to say, we can do anything, but we don't.
Yeah.
And then it's going to list the things that we don't do. We don't do X, we don't do Y, we don't do Z, we don't do this. And then below, it's going to say what we actually do. And so when people come to that services page, they're going to come up with the fact that we do not do these things, which is what some people might expect us to do. And then it's going to say we do these other things. So yeah, we just have to figure it out. Go ahead.
What would be? I'm just thinking out loud now. But like, if you say we can do anything, but we don't do bum 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 bum, and then if you followed up with client testimonials telling people what you do for them.
Oh, let me literally, I'm going into the document right here. Let me literally go into the document and read what I wrote. Okay. And you're saying come in with client testimonials right afterwards?
So you say we can do anything, and then you outline what you don't do, but then instead of you then saying what you do, if you can get your customers to talk for you, and you've got testimonials, and it's positioning of them, and you're saying I don't do those things, and you're like, let me tell you what I do, and then in comes your customers and say they do this, it was amazing, it did, I love it, and then they will be your ambassadors for you.
That is my business partner watching this live stream right now. He should be. And you know what? You know why that is great? Because Robert is saying that's genius. Robert is saying on LinkedIn, he's saying that's genius. You know why that is so great? Because our focus will be on relationship, and it makes that whole idea of somebody speaking on your behalf is one of the components of relationship. They know you, so they can say who you are. So that is great. That is great. Let your customers speak for you is what Robert is saying.
Yeah. And because when I do branding, when I talk about branding to people, I'm like, your brand is how people talk about you when you're not in the room. And like a lot of people say that, like that's not unique.
Yeah, that's not unique.
But to be able to have somebody talking about you clearly, and I borrowed that phrase because I think it's so powerful, because if you want a strong brand, it's like, can you trust other people to talk about you? And you're like, yeah, that's what we do. And so you have your clients talking for you, that sort of fits that role.
Yeah. And in recent time, I have been reaching out to more clients to get more testimonials, and we're going to put together some really cool case studies and things like that. Do you want to know my definition of what branding is?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So here's how I say it. I say branding is the thing that someone doesn't forget about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's basically how I define it. Because I remember I have the statement that I make usually, and the statement is that I don't remember everything, but I never forget.
Mm.
And it just simply means that I mean, might forget your name or might forget the time that we met. I would forget some of the details, but what I don't forget is what our interaction was like.
Yeah.
You know, what were the things about you that impacted me? I might remember something that you say that I could use it in life. And so yeah, so I thought for me that was a good definition of branding. Like for me personally, like what are the things about people that I just can't forget? I will never forget.
Yeah.
And for me, that is what branding is. So when you make that impression, good or bad, and people can't forget it, like there's some things that you've had experiences like that. I'm sure you could probably give a 20 stories about your time in China and things that happened that you never forget, and about people that you've met. And for you, I'm suspecting that if you were a client and that person who you remember was a brand, then for you in your mind that would be their brand, the thing that you don't forget about them. You know, so I don't know.
No, I'm so glad you brought this up, because when I had to sign out when we were talking earlier about the live that I joined of yours, where you were talking about the wedding photography and the hummingbird pictures, and I had to leave early, and I sort of said, "Hey guys, thanks very much, I got to go," and then you then said, "Thank you for saying goodbye. I appreciate that. I won't forget that."
Yeah. Yeah. That
Well,
I think. Go ahead.
About your interpretation of a brand is like, I remembered that what you said there. I was like, okay, so etiquette and common sense and courtesy is super important for Juma. I'm going to remember that. And that has always, every time I see your profile picture and the comments you make, I remember what you said when I signed out. And it was your appreciation of me signing out, saying, hey, bye, rather than just like, off and out, you know, disappearing. And you live your brand values right there.
Yeah, that impacted me so much, because I don't know if you realize, many people may not know this. I do say it from time to time. All of my posts, I say I started with good morning or good afternoon or good evening. Even my videos, I started that way.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because in our country, in Trinidad and Tobago, and I guess most of the Caribbean, there was a particular culture that we had growing up where you couldn't pass someone on the street without saying good morning, Miss Mabel, good afternoon. You know, it was almost punishable by death. As a child, you better tell the neighbor good morning. You know, otherwise they're gonna be like, your kid has. Well, let me say it a different way. Your kid has no manners, and then it'll be like, what? You didn't say good morning to Miss so and so, and then you would have hell to pay afterwards. But from a cultural perspective, that was very valuable. It made people were genuinely caring and they were community oriented. And in Trinidad and Tobago, we always say it like this. We always say morning. We say it twice for some reason. That's just a thing that we do. And so I always start my messages, my posts. If you go back and check every one of them. If I don't say it in the title,
it's triggered. You said good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I remember now, whenever I see your posts, it's good morning, good afternoon.
Yeah.
Six.
That's very, very deliberate. It's expression of the cultural thing that I feel is important. Is like you have to be mannerly and friendly. You have to, say those. So when you said you were leaving, that stood out to me, because that connected with who I was. And I was like, oh, I won't forget that. This is a guy who's like, he's not just dipping out. He isn't ghosting the live feed. He's like, he came, he made himself present and accountable. And then when he's leaving, he's also making himself accountable. And I like people who do that. I like people who, for me, that's impressive, And so people are getting a little bit of insight into how to impress me.
Well, I mean, imagine if we were in the same room and we were having a conversation and then I just got up and walked out. You'd be a bit like... what?
Yeah. It's like that. It's like that.
And we're moving etiquette and habits because we suddenly got accelerated online, and we're using the devices we've owned for 10 years, right? We've had webcams and smartphones for a long time. We've never really used them. And then since 2020, we've had to use them. And so our etiquette and our behavior and our good mornings, good afternoons, good evenings, it's like either we have them or we don't. And if we don't have them, we start to look really sort of unapproachable. And you were talking there about, growing up. So I spent like 16 years in China, and I just want to tell you how they say, what's the equivalent in China of good morning or good afternoon or good evening, like religiously. So whenever you meet somebody that you know, you say, 你吃了吗? Which is Chinese for have you eaten?
Okay.
And
okay.
It's just saying, are you full? Are you satisfied? Have you had a meal? And it worked. It's the Chinese way of saying good morning, because a lot of them get up super early. So it's like, have you eaten? Are you satisfied? Are you healthy? Have you got your food in the house? All these, I suppose, very subtle. And obviously China's history is quite crazy. 20th century was sort of a very hard regime for people. So people hadn't always eaten, and there was a big famine, and there was all sorts of issues like that. So you meet people and they go, 你吃了吗? And you sort of go, 吃了, 你吃了吗? And so it's like, have you eaten? Yes, I've eaten. Have you eaten? And so it's this really nice, warm exchange. And again, it's like, if you don't ask, people are a bit like, but you didn't ask if I'd eaten, And it's a rhetorical question, but it's a really warm greeting that lowers a level of, it creates more community. And when you were saying, if you didn't say hello to all your neighbors as you walked to school or whatever, it would be spoken about, and then your parents would be like, that's not how we brought you up, sort of thing. That you telling me that story just made me think of it, because I learned that a lot later. And obviously not obviously, but I grew up in London, and London's a pretty, like, we don't talk to people. We're pretty like, I don't want to make eye contact. I'm on the subway reading my book, don't talk to me. And then you go to China, people can be way more interested in talking to strangers.
Yeah. When I went to London, I had that. When I went to New York and to London, I had that experience, and I'm like, my goodness, it's like. Anyway, let me don't get into that. Let's keep on the good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like that. I feel that way, and people have small ways. Or my sister saying, yeah, that's true about London, because she lived in London for a few years, so she's online there saying that's true about London. Probably here's the problem. The problem is, the more advanced we get technologically, the more we are industrious in, the more economies grow, the less people are family, community oriented. It's like everybody's trying to work harder to get more, and they want more stuff and more stuff and more stuff. And there's less relationship, there's less connection, and people are being less human. And I think for me that is a sad thing, because at the end of the day, what are we going to do? We have a saying in Trinidad and Tobago, basically, like, if you have to buy something, like buy food, and you don't want to spend money on it, we say, well, we'll eat the money. And that basically saying, will you literally take the cash and eat it? No, you won't. You have to spend it to get the thing that you want. And it feels like in some instances people are like, they're so focused on getting stuff that that's gonna sustain them. But no, we really need community, and we need family. We need people who are focused on relationship, and that is at the core of what. That's why my company is called Relate. You can see it right there, behind.
Yeah,
that's why it's called Relate, because I believe in that 100%. Not because we did weddings or anything like that. Weddings, if we had a gas station, it'd be the same thing. If we had a pharmacy, it would be the same thing. So it would not change. And so when people do that, when you said what you said when you were leaving, and I know impeachment upon anybody who just dips out the live stream, that's fine.
Yeah.
But when somebody does the goes out of their way to say the opposite, then I like, all right, I'm gonna note that. So I have this idea that many years from now, when both of us are in different positions, when I would have been advanced in my career, maybe my company would have grown, maybe your company would have grown, and I could be in some country somewhere. We may not even have to be in our own home countries. And then if I see you, I'll be like, Martin, the guy who said he was leaving the live stream, and like, hey, let's I don't drink coffee. I'll say, let's have some juice or whatever.
Yeah.
And we'll have a good discussion, and I'll remember that, and we'll be able to talk about that time. And and relationship will conquer the divide. Lots of people who I meet on LinkedIn, 10 years from now, if I'm not on LinkedIn, I'm probably not going to remember them.
Yeah.
But there are a few people who I will remember. So it's great.
Yeah. I mean, you say that, you talk about your your company name, Relate, and we've had this whole conversation since you shared your interpretation of what a brand is. So my company is called 8 Seconds to Connect.
Yes.
Because I believe you have 8 seconds to connect in a pitch, or 8 seconds to connect on a live stream, or 8 seconds to connect in the feed stream, or whatever. And that 8 seconds, now we're having this conversation, I'm thinking that 8 seconds doesn't have to be the first 8 seconds. It can be 8 seconds of saying, I'm going now, bye. And that 8 seconds connected with you. And so it's not about being, I used to say you have to pitch like a sprinter, and you have to start your pitch with the best stuff to really catch people's attention. And I still believe that. But after our conversation, I believe it's also that 8 seconds can be placed anywhere. And you can actually make a really strong impression in 8 seconds by how you behave and what you say. And that, again, is sort of like how the relationship takes its first few steps into respect and community and awareness and understanding and relating. So that's just something you made me think about just now, actually.
Yeah. And I agree with that. So I saw that that was the name of your company. I hadn't given it lots of thought, but okay, let's this has been great. Let's recalibrate back down to some pitching stuff, and then we'll bring everything in for a landing. We had kind of said half hour, but now we're going for about an hour, which is great. So let's talk about some pitching related things, and then we'll bring the conversation in for a landing.
Okay.
All right. So I recently, I'm finished the book now. So I recently read a book called Win Without Pitching by Blair Enns. You know who that guy is?
No, I haven't heard of this one. Oh, Win Without Pitching. Is it like a manifesto? Quite short.
Yes, the manifesto.
Yeah.
You read it. What do you think about it?
Really good. It's correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like how to write proposals and how to sort of win business without sort of getting into a price comparison. Is that right?
Yeah, how to not write proposals mainly.
Yeah.
And I thought when you decided, when you messaged me and said, "Hey, let's jump on live together," that immediately popped into my head because I know what you do, but you pitch for startups, which is different. Yeah. Tell us a bit about that.
So, I mean, I've worked with startup founders. I've worked with serial entrepreneurs raising their C round raise. I've written presentations for tech company CEOs, going to conferences, presentations that went to the board of directors of Volkswagen. I've pitched to Hollywood executive producers. I actually turned down the opportunity to go and pitch to an A-lister because I wasn't pitching my idea, and I didn't want to go and present somebody else's idea and pitch what I would want to do, and then have no more connection with the project. And then he would come in and say, "Hang on, but this isn't what the guy pitched me." So at the moment, I focus on startups, and I focus on the founders on the edge of the spotlight who are about to make their first pitch. So I'm working with quite a few different people who have an idea, they're going out to meet people, they're building their deck, they're building their website, they're getting their first few customers. So I work a lot with those people. And then I'm also working with people who are trying to sell their business, who are
Right.
looking for acquisition, or they're not looking for investment, but they want to sell. And I believe that every time you increase your value is because you are pitching. And
Right.
my sort of focus is founders, but I also work with coaches and managers and leaders. But when I talk about it online, I'm, again, like we were saying, we don't talk about graphic design now because we don't want people to ask us to do graphic design projects. So I don't talk about pitching for coaches because I want to focus on startups. And it's like, how can you turn your pitch into a conversation? And how can you pitch the whole business rather than just the things you're comfortable with? And there is an amazing study out of the Sloan Management School at MIT that talks about when you're pitching your business, you think about horse racing.
Go ahead.
Brilliant. I love this concept. So this report went in and they said, okay, investors listen for there are different types of investors. Some investors want to hear the jockey story, which is the founder, the co-founder, the early leader.
Right.
And they get really excited by the jockeys. Some other investors are like, tell me about the racehorse. What product are you building? What is the thing that you're creating? Because the management team might change, the CEO might get booted out, the co-founder might change. Is the product what the market wants? Other investors are like, tell me about the race course. What market are you going into? Families, individuals, solopreneurs, mums, dads, kids. And then most investors tell me like, what are the odds? What is the return on investment? How are you going to spend the money? And so I teach this, and I've never shared this before. So this is an exclusive for the Useful Content Creation Show. This is what I do in my training. And it's like, when you think about it like that, you can look at all of your slides and all of your stories and say, what am I actually communicating? Am I talking about myself, the jockey, and my co-founders? Am I talking about the race course, the product we're building? Am I talking about the race course, the market we're serving? Am I talking about our race horse, which is our product? Or am I talking about the betting numbers? In X amount of time, this will become this with zero risk. And that makes it so much easier to think about the flow of your pitch and what stories you're telling. And so many founders will pitch from their comfort zone. So engineers will tell you for slide after slide after slide of how it works. Investors are super smart and they're like, I get it. Tell me how you and your team are going to make this a risk-free investment. So they will over pitch their comfort zone and then they will show you like, quick, here's our financials, boom, gone. Here's our burn rate, gone. Because they're not confident in telling that story. And the investor's like, well, I don't want a lecture on how AI face recognition is going to help stadium management seating. You can tell me that in a sentence and I'll get the potential. Tell me how you're going to look after my cash. And so when I work with founders, it's not a case, it's actually like a mindset and a strategy and content. And then it's slide design. And then it's also performance, because you don't perform with confidence if you don't have like you're very good at speaking because you don't rush. Your pauses are so well timed and you're not urgent to you're not panicked or flustered. You're just like, I'm going to get there. It's going to be fine. And your tonality moves really nicely. You have a lovely voice. So that is amazing. A lot of people talk too fast or they stutter or they, and you don't have filler words. So you're not, and the performance is super important because that actually projects how you feel about your content. And then the audience absorbs that way quicker than actually the sort of stuff you're saying. Your delivery, A lot of people will deliver a pitch, and I'm like, you have to perform the pitch. It's two different things. So yeah, that's what we do.
That's wow. That's a lot. That's fantastic. You just give a mini masterclass in pitching right there.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That analogy of the jockey horse race course and odds. Well, I don't want to repeat it too much because clearly it's something that you talk about when you teach people how to do it.
I've sat on it because I don't, but I've stupidly sat on it, and I think the more I talk about it, the more people, because you've just got it, because it's not even my idea, it's somebody else's. So I'm like holding back somebody else's idea. But you were able just to recite the 4 points because the analogy is so clear, and the way that it impacts pitching is so useful that, you know, whenever you, like, as you're developing whatever you talk about next, and you'll have a certain audience, you can sort of say, okay, in that audience, do they want to hear about the jockey, the racehorse, the race course, or the odds? And then when you get that balance right, the audience is just like leaning in. So I need to externalize it more because I know it, but I'm not using it.
Right. You know, the reason that stood out to me really strongly, we had a client meeting yesterday, and let me see if I could say without saying stuff. Yeah, so basically, we have this project that we're going to do. The project is we already won the project. So, well, let me just say won. It's a long-standing client of ours, and we're doing stuff with them. But for this particular project, we have to work with another team. Because it's a specific thing that they're going to do that is not our expertise, that we can't do anyway and we don't want to do. So we're working with another team. And so we had a meeting, and inside the meeting, the team was trying to explain what they do and how because we're going to record something that they do on behalf of this client. And they were trying to explain how long it's going to take. And they couldn't really, because of the nature of what they do, they couldn't explain how long it was going to take. And so while the person from the other team was in the meeting trying to explain it, I was just thinking, and usually when I think, I do like this, I look up. I literally look from side to side. If you see me doing that, that means I'm thinking of formulating something. And I'm in a meeting and I'm like looking up and figuring things out. And then it hit me that what they hadn't done is they hadn't codified or hadn't made a structure for how they're going to put this particular thing that they do together so that we could record it properly. So there were 3 main components of what they had to deliver. One of the components was location. Another one was the method, and another one, let's just call it the parts or the components, right? And each of the things that they had to deliver had those 3 different components in them. So all I did for them is I said, this is this one, this is that one, this is that one. These go together. We're going to record inside of this space, and you can tell me how long that's going to take. The second leg of it, we're going to do the same thing. So we started to codify all of the blocks. So I'm saying, stop thinking about it like a big project and start to think about it in blocks. Like this, you're going to do this block, this block, and that block. Because the thing that we're doing, we can't really, normally with a storyboard, we can kind of script it, but it's a difficult thing to do because of the nature of it. It's not exact every time. And so when you said that, for me, it was almost like I was seeing that thing playing over in my head again. You have codified how to pitch, and you have put something together that is, you can literally take it in a block and say, fulfill these. You tell me, it's almost like you have a scale of a percentage of 100, and you tell me what percentage of this has to be the betting part, what percentage of this has to be the jockey part, what percentage of this has to be the race course, and so on and so forth. And so you get a real clear picture of the emphasis of the particular pitch that you have to give to satisfy the person who you're pitching to. And so that codifies the thing. So you don't get mixed. You don't go in there not knowing what you're going to do. You don't even have to be skilled in the actual thing that you're going to talk about. You just know that you have to talk about it. You know, and you have to decide that I'm not going to be an engineer. I'm not going to tell them how it works. I'm going to talk about my story. And so you know that if you have 10 slides, then 5 of the slides have to be about you. One of the slides has to be about what the thing does, and the other 2 could be distributed according to how you see fit. And so that's how you codify it. So it makes it easy for somebody to take a system and then replicate it over and over and over again. So that's why it stood out to me.
Yeah. Bingo. It's all about the audience. And then you look at your 100%. And if you're talking to an investor, 60% should be numbers.
Right.
15% should be technology. Then the rest just gets chopped up between, you know, the product, the course. Well, you basically 60% is your numbers, and then the rest of the 40% is the other 3: product,
right,
market, and jockey. And then of course you can have, but then it gets also quite sophisticated because you can be talking about the numbers and you can slip in a bit of jockey story. You can slip in a little, so you can start to stack them, and then you've got real nuance and real flow because you're able to sort of relate. But when you have these clear labels and codifies, as you mentioned, it becomes a lot clearer to move the jigsaw pieces around.
That's right.
Rather than sort of crash through because you like talking about technology.
That's right. That's right. Right. Yeah. And it's all about the systems. It's like making it easy to do what people need to do. So people come confused and they want to know how. You tell them how to do it. And they pay for that, by the way. They have to pay. You tell them how to do it and they go away feeling like, oh, okay, now this thing can get done. You have solved the issue that they've been having. And that's why you get paid the big bucks, Martin.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah. All right, I think that was great. Let's bring it in for a landing here. My sister is saying, I keep on calling her my sister now. I don't usually do this. Is saying she loves the analogy with the horse and so on. She loves that analogy. Yeah. So that's great. So let's bring it in for landing. So it's been great talking to you. Tell the people where they can find you and your social media handles and anything of that sort you want to share.
Perfect. Yeah. So I am only on LinkedIn. That's the only place I have my attention on social media. And I am Martin Barnes, the Crocodile Wrestler. And I would love to connect with people and just keep sharing great ideas and also learning. I'm learning from you, Juma. I'm learning from so many people. So I'm like, my appetite now for tuning into other people is huge. So I want to connect.
Wonderful. So those who are down in the comments who are on the stream still go connect with Martin. I know definitely if my sister hasn't done that yet, she will. She has the same last name as me, so you'll know that it's her.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was so great talking with you today. So thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And thanks for sharing so much of your story. I wanted to talk a little bit more about China, but it's been an hour and 17 minutes. So we've gone for pretty a long time. So I'm thankful for the conversation. And I'll see you. Yeah, thank you. And I'll see you on the platform.
Yeah, see you in the feed.
Okay, great. All right, bye everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And we will see you on the feed as